You don't belong in first class, Sophia snapped, ripping a perfectly valid boarding pass straight down the middle like it was trash. Her eyes locked on a man dressed in a plain black t-shirt and jeans, unaware that in less than 30 minutes he would fire her in front of a full cabin of stunned passengers' flight staff and social media cameras already rolling. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a collapse of everything Horizon Airlines tried to hide. And that man, he wasn't just any passenger, he was Elias Vance, CEO billionaire, and 25% owner of the airline she just humiliated. Before we get into what happened on June 20th inside Gate B14, if you want the full breakdown of Injustice Redemption and a moment that changed U.S. aviation history, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. What would you have done in Elias's shoes? Let's get into it. The flight was scheduled to leave Chicago for Los Angeles at exactly 6:23 p.m. Central Time. Pre-boarding had just started. The first-class cabin was quiet, plush, cool, all that typical premium comfort stuff you see in ads. That's when Elias walked on calm, collected, unnoticed, exactly how he planned it. See, Elias Vance wasn't just traveling to LA, he was investigating his own airline. A string of online reviews had piled up, mostly ignored by PR, about how Horizon's staff treated passengers based on their looks. Not race outright, but appearance, clothing vibes, you know the type. So Elias dressed down, no Rolex, no suit, no entourage, just jeans, sneakers, and a black tee. First-class seat 2A, his paid in full, booked under his real name, no favors. But when he approached his seat, Sophia Reyes, 35, flight attendant from Ohio, looked him up and down like he was lost. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong cabin," she said flatly. Elias showed his boarding pass. Sophia didn't even glance at it. "That seat's been reassigned," she added. Already motioning toward the economy section, Kevin Moss, another flight attendant, younger smug from Texas, walked up and chuckled. "Yeah, man, you sure you're in the right place. Looks like economy's more your style." Elias raised an eyebrow, but kept his cool. "This says 2A first class." He handed over both his boarding pass and his ID, a clean Illinois driver's license. Sophia barely looked at it. "This has to be fake. We've seen this before just last month in Dallas." She scoffed, referring to a 2020 incident where another black passenger was told the same thing. Captain Alan Maxwell, tall, stern Midwestern, walked down from the cockpit, summoned by Sophia. "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have to remove you. We have VIP guests who need that seat," he said, already motioning behind him. That's when Mark and Jessica Thorne, a wealthy white couple, stepped forward holding champagne flutes and flashing platinum medallion tags, Mark said. "Is this going to be a problem?" Sophia replied. "We're handling it." The Thornes smiled, the seat reassignment clearly arranged ahead of time. Elias stayed seated, calm but firm. "I'm not moving." That's when Grace Miller, the security officer on site, mid-30s, born and raised in Illinois, stepped in hand on her utility belt. "Sir, I'm giving you one warning. Either vacate the seat or you'll be escorted off." A few rows back, Clara Dunn, a 22-year-old trainee flight attendant on her first solo assignment, looked stunned. She stepped up hesitantly. "Actually, I think his ticket's real. I saw it scan green," Sophia snapped. "Stay out of this." Clara stepped back, but not before tapping her phone's audio recorder and slipping it into her jacket pocket. In row 4, 2 passengers, white, clearly watching everything, looked horrified. Laura Chen, 38, from Minnesota, pulled out her phone and hit record. "This is discrimination," she muttered. Her seatmate David Singh, 42, from Florida, nodded. This is gonna blow up, watch, he started filming too. Sophia, now visibly irritated, grabbed Elias's boarding pass and tore it down the middle. You're going to economy or you're off. Elias blinked. Excuse me. She turned to Grace. Get him out? Elias pulled out his platinum business card, a thick matte black slab with his full name engraved. Sophia laughed. You people carry fake cards now? She asked, loud enough for others to hear. Captain Allen frowned. You've been warned. Elias, still composed, pulled out his phone and called Sarah Evans, his executive assistant. Sarah, log this contact the board, tell them we're about to have a situation. On the other end, Sarah answered instantly. Already on it, sending alerts now. Meanwhile, the Thorns stepped into seat 2A like royalty, sitting down where Elias should have been, brushing him off, as if he were invisible. Laura shook her head. This is so wrong. She uploaded her video to X and TikTok with the hashtag #HorizonShock within seconds. Views ticked upward. David followed, posting from a different angle. This is disgusting, he said on camera. Back in the galley, Clara overheard Sophia and Kevin whispering. Dude really thought he was flying first class. Kevin laughed. He probably printed that boarding pass at home, Sophia added. Not in those jeans, honey. Clara pressed record on her voice memo app again. She looked sick to her stomach. Back in the cabin, Alan walked up again. Last warning, Elias stood not to leave to face them. You're making a mistake, he said. You have no idea who I am. Sophia rolled her eyes. You're nobody economies that way? Laura stood up. He's got a valid ticket, I saw it. David joined her. You can't just take someone's seat because of what they look like, passengers murmured. Grace stepped forward. Sir, move now. Elias didn't budge. He looked straight at Alan. You're going to regret this, Alan scoffed. Threat noted from the galley. Clara reappeared, cheeks flushed. Captain, I really think you need to listen. He belongs here. Alan waved her off. Trainees don't speak during escalation. Sophia, still fuming, smirked. See, even your own staff knows you're lying. Laura raised her phone again. The internet's watching, she said. Her voice cut the air from the back, someone whispered. Is this that guy, the billionaire guy? Another murmured. What billionaire? But before the rumors could spread, Sophia returned to her iPad and typed something fast. She opened the seating log and deleted Elias's name. There she muttered to Kevin no record of Vance ever booking 2A. Kevin chuckled. Problem solved. Clara overheard it all. Her fingers tightened around her phone. Elias sat back down, not in defeat, but in defiance. You're ruining this company, he said. Sophia scoffed. It's not your company. Elias's jaw tightened. Want to bet? The camera panned back to Laura, who whispered into her phone's mic. Something's about to go down. Captain Allen's voice turned sharp, cutting through the cabin like static on a bad radio. Sir, this is your final notice. Leave first class or be removed. Elias didn't flinch. He stayed in his seat, calm but unshakable, like someone who had seen this game played 100 times. Sophia, standing to the side, arms crossed and lip curled, muttered to Kevin loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. He's a scammer, just like that guy in Atlanta last year who said he had a ticket. Kevin chuckled and added, Yeah, I've had enough of people trying to dress it up and sneak into seats they didn't pay for. Policy is policy. That word, policy, hung heavy in the air like a loaded weapon. Elias looked around the cabin, the Thorns now comfortably sipping wine in seat 2A, his seat, as if they hadn't just been part of a silent theft. Then came Grace again, the security officer stepping forward with slow, practiced authority. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, she warned. You don't want to end up on a no-fly list over this. Clara Dunn, still near the galley, looked over with wide eyes. But his scan was green, she repeated, as if that should matter. But it didn't. Not to Sophia, not to Kevin, and clearly not to Captain Alan Maxwell. Elias exhaled and muttered, "So this is how you do people who don't fit your image of first class." He pulled out his phone again, speaking just loud enough. "Sarah, send the audio to John, Emily, and Thomas. Tell them it's time." On the other end, Sarah Evans, crisp and focused, replied, "Already done, the board's aware." Sophia overheard and rolled her eyes. "Please, recording us." "For what?" "YouTube." Kevin laughed under his breath. "Maybe he'll go viral before we toss him." Nearby, Laura Chen stood halfway up in her seat, filming again. "This is wrong. The man hasn't raised his voice once. Why are you treating him like a threat?" David Singh nodded, holding his phone. "Exactly. Y'all keep saying policy but won't even look at his ID." Alan turned toward the passengers, eyes narrowing. "This passenger is interfering with pre-flight protocols. He's refusing staff instructions. We're following FAA guidelines." That phrase, FAA guidelines, made a few other passengers sit back down. Unsure what to believe, but Laura wasn't having it. "He showed you everything. You tore up his ticket and lied about the system." Sophia snapped back. "There is no record of an Elias Vance in seat 2A in the galley." Clara's fingers trembled around her phone. She had just recorded Sophia and Kevin mocking Elias again this time, saying dude probably borrowed those jeans from Goodwill. And now she watched as the seating log on Sophia's tablet showed a suspicious blank spot where Elias's name had once been. The log was altered. She saw it with her own eyes. This wasn't just a mistake. It was targeted, and it was ugly. Then the cabin turned quiet for a moment, that kind of uneasy quiet, before something shifts. One row back, a teenager whispered to his mom, "He's not doing anything wrong." The mom nodded quietly, pulling out her phone too. Meanwhile, Elias leaned back and thought about 20 years earlier, when he was just 25. Fresh out of grad school, applying for a job at a regional airline, he showed up in slacks and a button-down. "Still got rejected," the manager said. "Not the image we're looking for." That phrase stuck with him for decades. And here it was again, different faces, same energy, not the image. That rejection became fuel for every deal, every late night, every stake he'd built until he held 25% of Horizon Airlines. And now he was here being treated like trash on a plane he partially owned. Sarah's voice came through again, calm and razor-sharp. "John is standing by Emily's, reviewing the seating log. Thomas is pulling all incident reports from this month," Elias replied. "Tell them Clara has audio." Clara looked up at the mention of her name. She stepped forward slowly, Captain. "I recorded what Sophia and Kevin said. I think the board should hear it." Alan turned red. "That's a violation of crew protocol. Clara didn't back down, so is what they did." Sophia laughed, clearly shaken, but still snide. "Please, no one's going to believe a trainee. You don't even have wings yet." Laura raised her phone again. "I do. I believe her," David added. "Same here." Then someone from the back yelled us too. Momentum shifted. It wasn't just Elias anymore, it was everyone. Alan raised his voice. "This situation is escalating because of one non-compliant passenger." Grace stepped forward again, her stance more aggressive now. "Sir, this is your final warning. You'll be removed." Elias didn't move. He locked eyes with Grace. "I suggest you wait about 5 more minutes." She frowned. Why Elias's voice dropped low. "Because by then you'll be getting a call from someone who signs your paychecks." Laura looked at David, then back at Elias. "Who are you?" Elias didn't answer yet, not until it mattered. Grace's hand twitched at her radio, but before she called it in, Clara stepped fully into the aisle. "This is wrong," she said, voice shaking but firm. His ticket scanned green. "I watched it, I double-checked." Sophia rolled her eyes again. "He's probably scamming the whole system. You think we don't get fake tickets every week?" Elias turned to Sophia slowly. "You're talking to someone who's flown on this airline longer than you've worked here." Kevin leaned against the galley wall, trying to stay cool. "Then you should know the rules," Laura scoffed. "He does know the rules better than you." Then David said it loud and clear. "You're gonna lose your jobs over this." That's when Sophia panicked, whispered to Kevin. "Do you think he's somebody?" Kevin glanced at Elias's face. Steady, unreadable. "He looks familiar." Sophia's voice dropped. "Vance, wait, no, it can't be." Clara looked from Sophia to Elias, then back, her eyes widened. Sarah's voice came in again, this time firmer. "They know who you are now, the board's ready. If they make one more move, give the signal." Elias's lips curved into a calm, cutting smile. "Let's give them that move." Then, just as Sophia raised her hand to wave Grace in again, Clara stepped forward with her phone raised. "I have everything recorded, and I'll send it to the board if you try to remove him." Sophia froze. Kevin stepped back. Alan cursed under his breath. Laura's video just passed 5,000 views. David's wasn't far behind. The pressure was mounting the cabin tense. Elias stood slowly. "Your bias ends here." The cabin, once silent, erupted in murmurs of agreement. Passengers began standing with him, and just like that, a quiet man in a black t-shirt wasn't alone anymore. Captain Alan Maxwell's voice cracked through the intercom, like a final blow to dignity attention passengers due to a disruption in first class. "We are asking all guests to remain seated as we remove a non-compliant individual refusing staff instructions." The cabin fell into stunned silence. Elias Vance didn't blink. He was still seated, still calm, staring ahead while the walls of injustice closed in. Sophia stood just behind Alan, smirking like the announcement sealed it. Kevin lingered by the galley, arms crossed, enjoying the show. "That's it," Grace muttered, stepping forward, hand resting near her radio. "We're doing this the hard way." She reached for Elias's arm. "Sir, stand up now." Elias turned his head slowly, voice low but cutting. "You put your hands on me. You'll answer to a boardroom, not a holding cell." She froze, not because she believed him, not yet, but because of the force in his tone. Across the aisle, Laura Chen's phone didn't stop recording. "You see this?" she said. "They're really gonna drag him out for having a legit ticket." Her video, posted under the tag #HorizonShock, had already hit 95,000 views and climbing. "This is what racism looks like in 2025, her caption read. 2 rows back, David Singh posted a clip from a different angle overlaying the words, "This man showed ID, he showed his ticket." They just didn't like how he looked. His video crossed 100K just as Alan finished his intercom message. Meanwhile, Clara Dunn, the young trainee flight attendant who had been quietly recording from the galley, stepped into the aisle, her nerves visibly shaking, but her voice finding its spine. "Captain, please, I have proof he was scanned and his boarding pass was valid. I heard Sophia say there was no record after she deleted it herself." Sophia spun around, eyes wide. "Excuse me. That's a lie." Clara didn't flinch. "You said it. You and Kevin were laughing about it in the galley. I recorded it." Alan's face went pale. "You recorded the crew?" Clara nodded. "Sure did." Sophia's smirk vanished. "That's illegal," David yelled from his seat. "So is tearing up someone's ticket and lying about it." Passengers started murmuring, some standing up to see better. The pressure shifted fast. What had started as one man being targeted was now a cabin full of witnesses. "They're trying to erase a paying customer," someone muttered. "This is insane." Sophia turned to Kevin, her voice suddenly panicked. "We're losing control of the cabin," Kevin muttered. "This is on you. You wanted to push him out." Laura took a bold step forward, raising her phone high. "Don't touch him. We're all watching and we're not letting you drag him off this plane," another passenger added. "You do that, and you'll be on the news by midnight." The human tide formed fast, a soft blockade of standing passengers, holding phones, blocking Grace and Alan from getting to Elias. He remained in his seat, calm phone still in hand. "Sarah," he said, speaking into his AirPods. "Tell John, Emily, and Thomas the situation's escalated. They need to hear this." Sarah's voice came back, sharp, unwavering. "I've already looped in the board. They're in emergency session now. Legal is reviewing the audio and video." Elias nodded slightly, his eyes meeting Grace's. "If you remove me now, you remove your future with this airline." Alan stepped in again, trying to assert authority. "You can't speak to my team that way. I'm speaking to them like someone who signs their payroll checks," Elias said, his tone flat. Not raised, but something in the room shifted. Sophia blinked. "Wait. What?" Kevin's face turned gray. "You're joking." Grace hesitated, lowering her radio slightly. Elias said nothing more, not yet letting the weight of uncertainty hang in the air like storm clouds from the galley. Clara hit play on her phone. The voice memo echoed Sophia saying, "Not in those jeans," Kevin laughing about fake tickets, and a short clip where Sophia muttered, "Delete it." Vance's name doesn't belong in first class anyway. Passengers gasped. David said loudly, "That's it. That's all the proof you need," Laura added. They deleted his name from the system. This was planned. Sophia spun around yelling. She edited that she spliced it, but no one was listening to her anymore. Alan's eyes darted between his crew and the crowd. "Everyone sit down," he started. But the passengers weren't budging. "You're not removing anyone," David said. "We're staying right here," Grace looked at Alan. "Captain, this isn't going how it's supposed to. You think he snapped back? The power they thought they had was slipping fast, and they knew it." Sophia was sweating now, visibly shaken. "Okay, fine," she said, flustered. "Maybe we misread the situation." Elias finally stood up, not to leave, but to face them all. "No," he said, "you read it exactly how you wanted. You saw a black man in jeans and you decided I didn't belong. You ripped up my ticket. You lied about my ID. You forged the log. You mocked me in the galley, all of it for optics." Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Then from the other side of the cabin, a passenger, older, quiet, until now, said, "This feels familiar. This happened to my son, different city, same playbook." Murmurs rippled through the rows. Passengers weren't just reacting, they were remembering. "I've seen this," someone said. "Every time they claim policy, it's always the same." Clara took a breath, stepped beside Elias. "He's telling the truth. I back him 100%. Alan raised his voice again. "This crew is trained to follow FAA protocol. And to profile people," Elias cut in. "To target based on clothing skin. No response." Elias nodded. Right then his phone buzzed. Sarah's voice came into his earpiece. "They're ready." He didn't say anything else. He looked at Sophia, then Kevin, then Alan. "You'll want to sit down. You're about to be very unemployed." Sophia stepped back. Wait, she whispered. Kevin looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Alan tried to gather what was left of his authority. "This is a misunderstanding." Elias stared him down. "You're gonna wish it was Laura's phone buzzed. My video just hit 100,000 views. David checked his, too. Mine's at 130K, comments are exploding, everyone's calling this out. The Thorns, who had been silent, seated in 2A, finally spoke. Mark cleared his throat. We didn't ask for this. Elias turned toward them. But you didn't stop it either. Jessica lowered her gaze. We thought staff knew best. Staff lied. Elias replied. And you benefited from it. The cabin was still, now the crew had no control. Elias had not yet revealed his identity, but he didn't need to not anymore. The power had already shifted. Captain Allen's jaw clenched as he turned from the passengers to Sophia, Kevin, and Grace. Enough, he snapped, eyes, wild voice unsteady. Remove him now. Sophia didn't hesitate. She stormed down the aisle with Kevin on her left, and Grace stepping forward, hand hovering close to Elias's shoulder. Sir, we're done playing games. You're coming with us, Grace ordered, her voice louder than before, trying to mask her rising discomfort with authority. Elias didn't move. He simply looked down at his phone and tapped once. Sarah, he said, calm as ever. They're making their final move. Confirm board status. On the other end, Sarah's voice rang clear in his AirPods. The board is live. All 3 members, John, Emily, Thomas, are online. They've reviewed the logs, the footage, and the audio. They're ready. Elias nodded once, then looked up just as Grace reached for him. Don't, he said, not loudly, but with a gravity that made her hesitate. You're a single decision away from either saving your job or losing it forever. Grace blinked, her hand frozen in the air. Behind them, passengers were no longer just filming. They were speaking out, some standing, some forming a loose blockade between Elias and the crew. You're not taking him anywhere, Laura Chen declared, her phone still raised. You tore up his boarding pass, you mocked him, and now you want to throw him off the plane, David. Singh stood beside her, adding, That's not security, that's abuse. Someone in row 5 shouted, He paid for that seat, I saw him check in. Another voice added, This is happening way too often, Sophia shouted back. Everyone stay seated or you'll be removed too, but no one sat. Instead, more passengers stood up, creating a wall of resistance, shoulder to shoulder, holding phones, muttering to each other, some in anger, some in disbelief. Grace's voice dropped into a whisper, leaning toward Alan. This doesn't feel right anymore, Alan hissed. Just follow orders. But she didn't move instead. Her eyes shifted from Elias to Clara, who was standing across the aisle holding her phone tightly against her chest, the screen glowing with the voice memo app still running. Clara stepped forward, her voice cracking at first, but gaining strength. I heard Sophia and Kevin in the galley. They joked about how Elias didn't belong here and said they'd make it look like a mix-up. Sophia wheeled around, red-faced. You're a trainee. You don't know protocol. Clara shook her head. I know right from wrong, and this is wrong. Alan opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Laura yelled over him. Shut it, Captain, we've all heard the audio. We've all seen how you treated him. David raised his phone higher. My video just hit 2,000 views. The world's watching now. #Horizon Shock is trending. Alan's lips curled in frustration, realizing he was no longer in control of the narrative or the cabin. Then came the final crack in their armor. Sarah's voice came through Elias's earpiece again, firm and decisive. John says it's time. Emily and Thomas are backing full executive authority. You are cleared to act. Elias took a slow step forward, facing Sophia. Kevin, Allen, and Grace. The 4 who had spent the last 20 minutes unraveling the dignity of an innocent man based on his clothes, his skin, and their unchecked bias. But he didn't speak to them just yet. He turned first to the passengers. Thank you, he said, not just for filming, but for standing up, for not sitting back when it was easier to stay quiet. Then he looked to Clara. You showed more integrity in one day than some do in their whole career. Clara nodded, tears quietly lining her eyes. Sophia took a step back, sensing the shift, trying to salvage control. Look, maybe we misjudged. You didn't misjudge, Elias interrupted sharply. You chose to ignore my ID. You chose to tear up my boarding pass. You chose to erase my name from the log. You laughed about it, and now you're scrambling because the mask is off. Alan tried to step in again. Sir, we can escalate this to federal security. You won't need to, Elias said, finally stepping fully into the aisle. Because I am Elias Vance, CEO, and 25% shareholder of Horizon Airlines, and as of this moment the board is aware of every second of this incident. The air went completely still. Sophia's mouth dropped open. Kevin stuttered. You're lying. Elias didn't flinch. Sarah patching John on speaker. A second later, a calm, authoritative male voice filled the cabin from Elias's phone speaker. This is John Thompson, Horizon board member. We've received full recordings from Elias Vance and the staff member Clara Dunn. This situation is being handled internally. Any Horizon employee who attempts to interfere further will be terminated. Grace staggered back like she'd been hit. Kevin looked like he might throw up. Alan's voice dropped to a whisper. My God, Laura gasped. I knew it. I freaking knew it. David laughed, both stunned and impressed. Holy hell, that's the CEO. Sophia finally spoke, her voice trembling. Elias, I didn't know. Elias turned his gaze toward her, calm, cold, and heavy. That was the point. You didn't see me. You saw your version of me, and you decided I didn't deserve to sit in a seat I paid for on a plane I partly own. He turned to Grace. You can still fix this. You can make the right call. But you've got to make it now. Grace swallowed hard, then slowly stepped back. I'm not touching him. She lowered her hand from her radio. I want no part of this mess. Passengers clapped. Not loud, but enough to shift the weight of the room. Alan stood frozen, Sophia in shock, Kevin leaning against the galley wall like he was sinking. Elias lifted his phone again. Sarah, tell the board we'll be proceeding with crew terminations before takeoff. Replacement crew should be ready at the gate in 10. Sarah replied. Confirmed, Sophia whispered. Please, Elias, this was a mistake. No, Elias replied, cool and final. This was a pattern, and now that pattern ends. The cabin didn't erupt. It didn't need to. It was quiet, charged, settled. The fight was over. Now came the consequences. Elias Vance stood in the aisle of Horizon Airlines Flight 227, like he had just taken back the reins of a runaway train. His voice steady, his posture calm, but his presence now undeniable. Let's make this official, he said loud enough for everyone in the first-class cabin to hear. My name is Elias Vance. I'm the CEO of Horizon Airlines and a 25% shareholder of this company. What just happened on this aircraft is not only a violation of our code of conduct, it's a direct insult to every value we claim to uphold. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin, followed by a stunned, reverent silence. Sophia staggered back as if slapped her hand covering her mouth. Kevin's arms dropped to his sides. The smug grin long gone, replaced with a blank stare, like his brain had blue-screened. Captain Alan Maxwell looked like someone had ripped his name off his pilot badge. Wait, Alan said finally, speaking voice cracking. You're Elias Vance. The same, Elias replied flatly. And unless you want security escorting you off this aircraft in front of a growing crowd of recording passengers, I suggest you cooperate. Grace, who had been shifting uncomfortably since Elias dropped the truth, didn't say a word. She simply took a step back from the aisle and crossed her arms. I'm not stopping this, she muttered. I'm done. Laura covered her mouth in disbelief, her phone still rolling. My God, I knew something was off. He was too calm, too confident, David said. You ever seen somebody walk into a lion's den with that much patience? That was a boss move, literally. Elias turned toward his AirPods again. Sarah? Where are we with the board? Sarah responded in real time, her voice playing clearly on speaker. John, Emily, and Thomas are all in agreement. Terminations approved. Emergency Protocol 17A is in effect. You have full authority to proceed. Elias Sophia dropped into the jump seat, eyes wide, chest rising and falling like she'd just run a mile. Please, I didn't know who you were. Elias tilted his head, not unkind, but completely unimpressed. That's the problem. You don't treat people with respect unless you think they're somebody. That's not how this airline runs, not anymore. Kevin tried to chime in, hands open, pleading. Look, man, it wasn't personal. Stop talking, Elias said without turning. You had multiple chances to check the system. You mocked my card. You laughed at my name. You stood by while Sophia tore up a valid boarding pass and fabricated a seating record. That's not just bias, that's corruption. He turned to Captain Allen, last locking eyes. And you, the highest authority on this plane, backed it all without question, without proof. You overrode policy to satisfy a VIP couple because you assumed someone like me couldn't possibly belong here. Allen looked down. I made a judgment call. No, Elias corrected. You made a biased call, and now you're grounded. Sarah's voice came through again. Replacement crew arriving at Gate B14 in 7 minutes. Ground manager has been informed. Please proceed with escort. Elias stepped back slightly, giving Sophia, Kevin, and Allen space to exit. You are all relieved of duty permanently. You'll be escorted off this aircraft immediately. You are not to return to Horizon Airlines property unless contacted by legal. Sophia looked like she might faint. You can't just, Sarah Elias said. Please confirm their employee IDs are flagged, Sarah responded. Confirmed terminated system updated. Kevin exhaled sharply and muttered, damn. Allen, still pale, stood stiffly. Captain's log will reflect full incident. Don't worry, Elias said, so will mine, and mine carries more weight. A few scattered claps broke out in the cabin. Then a few more, and before long, a round of applause rose up. Not the thunderous kind, but a steady, heartfelt rhythm from passengers who had seen enough and were ready to exhale. Laura smiled and whispered, That's justice, David added. That's leadership. As the terminated crew members slowly began gathering their things, escorted down the aisle by 2 newly arrived gate managers, Elias turned to Grace. You had a choice, and you hesitated, but you didn't push it too far. Grace nodded slowly, almost like she wasn't sure she deserved his mercy. I got caught up in it. I'm not proud. You'll be retrained, Elias said. You'll be assigned to a different base for a while. You get 1 shot to prove you belong on this team. Grace didn't cry, but her eyes watered. Thank you, sir. Clara stood quietly off to the side, still gripping her phone. Unsure what to do now, Elias walked over to her and extended his hand. You're getting promoted effective immediately. Horizon doesn't need more bodies, we need integrity. And you've shown more courage in 1 flight than most see in a whole career. Clara's eyes widened, stunned. Seriously? Seriously, he said with a nod. We'll get you a badge and wings today. More clapping, some passengers stood, one even called out. Finally, someone who gives a damn? Sarah chimed in once more. Board has confirmed full support for your decisions. Crew retraining and policy audits begin immediately. David Lee will oversee compliance. Compensation is being issued to affected passengers. Elias gave a small, tired smile. Thanks, Sarah. Keep me updated. Then, turning to the passengers, he raised his voice gently. I want to thank all of you for your patience, for recording, for speaking up. This flight will be delayed, but it will fly, and the people on board will be treated with the dignity they deserve." Laura wiped her eyes. "You've changed this airline tonight," David grinned. "This is going to be in every news cycle by tomorrow." Elias shrugged. "Let it be sometimes the truth needs airtime." A few rows down, an elderly couple gave Elias a quiet nod. Another woman said, "My son's been through this, thank you for not backing down." Elias looked around and said, "No one should have to look like money to be treated like a person." And with that, he took his seat 2A, where he belonged from the beginning this time. No one questioned it. No one challenged it. No one dared. 10 minutes later, the air in the terminal outside gate B14 felt just as tense as the cabin had been, except now. The fired crew stood under fluorescent airport lights, stripped of their titles, holding their carry-ons like civilians. Elias Vance stepped off the plane, briefly flanked by 2 board-authorized security officers and Sarah on a live call through his AirPods. Sophia stood rigid, mascara streaking beneath her eyes, whispering again and again that she hadn't known that it was just a misunderstanding. "You knew what you were doing," Elias said, his voice even but laced with finality. "You didn't need to know who I was. All you had to know was that I was a human being who paid for a seat and showed valid ID." Kevin stood beside her, arms crossed, no more jokes left in him, just a blank stare and a sagging posture. "You're done," Elias continued. "Your employee records have been closed. You'll receive no severance. Your access is revoked," Sarah added in his ear. "Confirmed systems updated, they're locked out." Then came Captain Alan Maxwell, once the highest authority on the aircraft. Now no more than a man in uniform who had forgotten that leadership begins with listening. "I served 23 years, he muttered. "Then you should have known better," Elias replied sharply. "And that makes this even worse." Security officers motioned them toward the terminal exit. Sophia looked back, hollow. Kevin didn't, Alan didn't either. Elias didn't flinch. As they disappeared into the crowd, Elias turned back toward the gate area, where Grace Miller stood by the wall, her eyes heavy but clear. She stepped forward cautiously, unsure whether to speak. "You gave me a choice," she said softly, "and I almost blew it." Elias didn't interrupt. He let her feel the weight of her words. "I didn't pull him out, but I didn't stand up either, and that's going to sit with me for a long time." Elias gave a small nod. "We've all stood on the wrong side of something. What matters is what we do next." Grace straightened. "I'll do better. I want to learn. Then you'll start retraining next week," he said. "You'll report to a different base and you'll shadow Clara Dunn." Grace blinked, surprised. Clara Elias smiled. She just got promoted back at the gate. Clara stood by the door in disbelief, badge freshly issued, cheeks flushed, as fellow crew members congratulated her. A manager handed her official wings. She stared down at them like they might disappear if she blinked. Elias approached her and held out his hand. "You kept your head down when they told you to stay quiet, but you spoke anyway. You trusted what was right. That takes courage." She stammered. "I couldn't watch it happen. Not again." Elias nodded. "And now you'll help lead change." Then Sarah's voice returned in his ear. "Elias, we've got something. Kevin just admitted in his exit interview that this isn't the first time," said Sophia Allen. "And he covered up at least 3 prior complaints, all buried by altering logs." Elias's jaw tensed. "Where 2 in Los Angeles, 1 in Phoenix, all minority passengers, all assigned first-class records, tampered to downgrade or remove them." "This is bigger than bias," Elias muttered. "This is systematic deception," Sarah continued. David Lee already ordered a full audit. Starting today, Emily's putting out a public statement. John wants to brief the DOJ by morning. Elias turned toward the window, watching planes pull in and out on the tarmac, each one carrying people who'd trust they'd be treated fairly, no matter what they wore or where they came from. "Then let's clean house," he said. From the top down, he walked back toward the gate, where passengers now deboarded temporarily during the crew switch waited patiently, many of them still shaken. Some applauded softly as he approached. One woman stood and said, "You didn't have to come yourself." "But you did," another added. "You could have let PR handle it, but you stood in it." Elias gave a humble nod. That's what leadership is, not hiding behind statements, but showing up in the hard moments. Clara stood beside him now, wings pinned Grace off to the side. Silently observing, Sarah reported, "New crew is briefed, and boarding flight can resume in 15. Elias looked around one last time. "Make sure every passenger affected today receives a direct apology full refund and lifetime platinum status, no exceptions." "On it," Sarah replied, already processing. "And Clara," he added, "set her up with mentorship under our DEI lead." "She's going far." Clara's eyes went wide again. Seriously," Elias said with a smile. "This company needs more of you." Then he turned to Grace. "You'll be shadowing her. Learn from the voice you tried to ignore." Grace nodded. "I will." Sarah chimed in once more. Elias trending update #Horizon Shock just crossed 75,000 views. Media's asking for a statement. "Let them watch," he said. "We're not going viral. We're going accountable." He stepped back into the jet bridge, ready to reboard not just the plane, but a new era for the airline he helped build, not through press releases or social media spin, but through action consequences and redemption, all before takeoff. The wheels of Flight 227 finally lifted off the Chicago runway at 8:12 p.m., nearly 2 hours behind schedule. But for the 134 passengers on board, not a single complaint was heard. In fact, the cabin was strangely calm, as if everyone knew they were part of something bigger than a delayed departure, something that would be talked about long after the seatbelt sign turned off. Elias Vance sat quietly in seat 2A. This time unchallenged his seatmate, nodding to him respectfully, but not saying much. Not because he didn't want to, but because he understood that some moments deserve quiet. Outside the window, city lights faded into clouds. Inside the cabin, the new crew moved with grace and professionalism, already briefed on what had occurred. Clara Dunn now wore her full wings pinned above her heart, and though she still looked slightly overwhelmed, she moved with a sense of purpose, offering drinks and checking on each guest like it was a personal mission. Elias watched her with quiet pride, knowing her story would echo through training sessions for years to come. Across the aisle, Laura and David were still glued to their phones. Laura leaned toward him, whispering, "You've changed more than just this flight," David added. "Your name's everywhere. Videos hit 1 million views." Elias smiled faintly but didn't respond. It was never about going viral. It was about being visible, not as a CEO, not as a shareholder, but as a human being who wanted to be treated fairly. He looked out the window again, his thoughts drifting, not to the headlines that were surely exploding, not to the press statements that Sarah was undoubtedly fielding, but to the quiet resistance that bloomed in that cabin when a few strangers decided to stand up instead of stand by. That was the real win. In the front galley, Grace Miller leaned against the wall, deep in thought. She hadn't spoken much since reboarding, but when Clara passed by, Grace quietly said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Clara smiled gently. We've all got things to unlearn. Nearby, a couple who had witnessed the entire ordeal tapped Elias on the shoulder. We just wanted to say thank you. The woman said my nephew went through something like this last year. No one listened. You made it count. Elias nodded, humbled. Tell him things are changing, the man added. Because of you, Elias shook his head. Because people finally stopped letting silence speak for them. A chime sounded overhead. The pilot. The new one came on the intercom, his voice measured and respectful. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reyes. We are now cruising at 32,000 feet. Thank you for your patience today. On behalf of the new crew and Horizon Airlines, we appreciate your trust, and we thank Mr. Vance for personally restoring that trust. A wave of soft clapping filled the cabin. Not thunderous, not performative, just real. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just about one flight. It was about years of being second-guessed, overlooked, and told to prove himself 3 times over. It was about the job offer he never got at 25 because of optics. It was about the boy from the south side of Chicago who once sat in the back of the plane and dreamed of owning the whole fleet now. Here he was not just a passenger, but the architect of reform. Sarah's voice chimed gently through his AirPods again. All board directives are in motion. Public statements scheduled for the morning. Audits underway. Legal is preparing ethics reviews for every base. Elias nodded to no one in particular. Good, he whispered. Let it start now, Sarah added. Media wants your quote. Elias paused. Then, without hesitation, replied, Tell them I didn't come to make noise. I came to make change. A few rows back, someone murmured. This flight should be in a movie, another said. Nah, it should be policy. The hashtags kept climbing, but Elias tuned them out. He looked to Clara, to Grace, to the passengers who stood with him, and thought this is what legacy feels like. Not a plaque, not a press release, but a culture reset born mid-air. A few months from now, new policy would be rolled out across Horizon's 48 bases. Zero tolerance for discrimination, mandatory bias response training, and direct reporting channels to the board. Clara would be named regional training lead. Grace would become her co-lead after completing full retraining. And Elias, he would quietly ensure that every cabin at 3,000 feet became a place where no one had to justify their right to be there. The clouds outside thinned, revealing a soft stretch of stars above the flight path. Somewhere below, cities blinked like quiet witnesses. And inside 2A, Elias Vance sat still watching the sky, not chasing justice anymore, but flying with it.